everyone gathered today, all the good people here today to honor Detectives Rafael Ramos and Wen Jianlu.
We have two mottos in the NYPD. The first in Latin, Fidelis ad mortem, faithful until death. Certainly, these two detectives, these two brave men, were the examples of that motto, honorably serving their city, their department, honorably representing and loving their families. They were faithful to their oath of office. They were faithful to their marriage vows. They were faithful to all that is good about good men. And our second motto is, we will never forget. And I think over this past year, the families have clearly seen the down payment on that motto, that we will be faithful always to never allow their memories to dim or be forgotten. These memorial plaques that will be mounted inside this station house will be there for all time, so that everyone who enters this station house can be reminded of their sacrifice.
I will hear his voice every day. For the past 33 years of his life. This is the longest that I have ever heard or seen my son. I would give anything to see him and hear his voice again. For the past year, it has been extremely difficult for our family.
The 46th precinct was Officer Mia Sotis Familia's home away from home, especially respected and well known because she grew up in the neighborhood she protected and where she gave her life. You can see the tributes, the cards and flowers being left in her honor there at the doorstep in a community that is heartbroken.
No officer should ever be ambushed trying to do his or her job.
Amen, amen, amen. Prayers of comfort for the distraught family of Officer Mia Sotis Familia. So determined to wear the blue, she left her job as a nurse in her mid-30s to become one of New York's finest, usually working the night shift in the mobile command center where a gunman shot her in the head at point-blank range through a passenger side window. What police say was an unprovoked random assassination of a 48-year-old officer and mother with 11-year-old twins and a 19-year-old daughter.
You know, she did her job, and it's sad for her to go this way. It's really sad.
New details also about her killer, Alexander Bonds, 34, a twice-convicted felon, out on parole, armed with a stolen gun, shot dead by police as he tried to escape. Senior NYPD officials tell NBC News they're now investigating whether Bonds is the man in these videos, making anti-police statements posted on a Facebook page believed to be his.
Justice. You say you about justice? Well, I want justice.
On the streets where Officer Familia died, plagued by guns, gangs, and drugs, grateful residents said she and her colleagues were making a difference.
They had gotten better since the command center was posted there.
And in the aftermath of this horrible tragedy, residents now vowing to step up their efforts to support the officers there to protect them. New York's governor has ordered flags flown at half-staff. The nation's top law enforcement officer, the U.S. Attorney General, has praised the officer. And an endless sea of blue is expected to arrive here once arrangements are announced and made to lay the fallen officer to rest.
Now, while this has been a stressful and very difficult year for all of us, it has been really hard on people in law enforcement. After confrontations with protesters and calls to defund the police, some officers are calling it quits. NBC4's Ted Hart joins us now live from downtown with the story of one local officer who decided already enough is enough. Ted.
And Darlene, in his first days back after a week off duty, Columbus police officer Sheldon Harris says he had a gun pointed at him, and given the current climate, he said even if you do everything right, that can be a career-ending moment. So the now former Columbus police officer says while he loved serving the community, he has decided the risks were not worth it. Sheldon Harris says he always had a heart to serve. Even as he worked full-time as a Columbus police officer, he was also a pastor and a volunteer. He was honored for excellence in community policing. Harris says the stress of working during the downtown violence this summer was one of the hardest times of his life.
You want to be out there and serve, you want to be out there and protect, but you run the risk of even doing your job right and being ridiculed by the community.
Harris says he always planned to eventually leave policing and become a full-time pastor. That decision was expedited by the climate of the community this summer, including receiving threats, something he says is actually fairly common for police officers.
To be honest with you, on social media, they did find out where I lived. They found out where I worked on my special duty, and they threatened my entire family. To the point where we even had to leave for a couple of days until it was safe.
Harris believes there will be an exodus of police officers from departments across the country, resignations, and early retirements.
They're afraid to do their job, and unfortunately, that can actually risk the life of the officer because they're hesitating doing their job because they're afraid of the consequences that may happen just from doing it right.
Every day is different in police work. You never know what that next call is going to be. It could be a cat up a tree. It could be a man with a gun. You just never know. It's an adrenaline rush, but you have to keep it in check. It's a lot, and your family does suffer sometimes. So I continued to say, show me your hands, and in one motion, turned, wheeled, and raised the gun. At that point, we exchanged gunfire, and I realized that I had been shot. I spent one night in the hospital. They ran a bunch of tests. I had to see our police psychologist to get cleared for work. Well, you kind of get the blessing. Yep, you're good to go. And everything seemed fine. You know, it's kind of like get back on that horse. I knew something at that point was starting. I had headaches. Didn't know why. Thought maybe it was just stress. I started to have flashbacks of that muzzle flash, that ball of fire from 10 feet. And I would wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, and I couldn't go back to sleep. I'd wake up soaked in sweat. I would pace the house at 3 in the morning. I'd see the trash man coming at 4. It was like I was almost afraid to go back to sleep for fear of getting back into that nightmare. And I wasn't it all together as stemming from that incident. You know, as cops, we're supposed to be strong. We internalize it, and we don't talk about it, and it builds up inside. So once I realized that I needed to take some time and figure out and get my head back together and fix my head, I never had given that a thought. You have all these military vets in our department that saw battle and saw time, and they're all fine. And here I am struggling. I just got shot in the leg. It wasn't like anything crazy like these guys have experienced. It was humbling and embarrassing. And I said I would do whatever it took. And I did. I never stopped the treatments because I was still having the symptoms. Yeah, I was able to better handle it and deal with it, but the symptoms were still there. And we just kind of did baby steps, and I gradually increased my time at work, and next thing I knew, I was back full time. At one point, and I don't know when it was, I I started to realize the night terrors were gone. The muzzle flash was gone. The irritability, the anxiety had diminished. And I don't think it was until I went back to work and got back into the everyday routine of being a cop again that the symptoms subsided. Sometimes it takes hitting that rock bottom, and you just hope that rock bottom isn't a bad situation. We put guys out all the time for whatever injuries they have, and they're out until they're better. And we accept that. But the mental health aspect of our job is something that we need to focus more on. I'm not a big public speaker, but in this case, I don't mind sharing. For me, it is therapy in itself, just talking about it. And it does make me feel good that I can be a success story, to be able to, tell somebody that it is possible to get through this. That's the story that I want to share with people.
lot of different things motivate people to become police officers. Really, there's only 3 types of police officers. Person that goes in that wants to make an hourly wage. The other person wants to be a hero. And the other person wants to fix things. I identified myself early. I wanted to be a hero. I would have done anything to be a hero. My early years in the force, it was a little challenging and difficult. That was the time of the crack epidemic, so there was a lot of shootings, a lot of homicides, a lot of assaults, a lot of crime. I had the opportunity to see the very worst of people, in the early part of my life. In police culture, no one ever admits that they're weak. No one ever admits that they're hurting. If you were in a shooting or a real bad incident, the job would send you to see, a psychologist, and we would know exactly what to say and say it so we can get right back out. There was rubble all over the place. When we got directly underneath the building, I could hear a crack, and I looked up. We went over to the side of a building, held onto the building. I could feel the debris brush by us. So we went in and we started the recovery mission. We searched through that rubble forever that day. I've never felt so more defeated. I wanted to be in emergency service because, again, I wanted to be the hero, and I wanted to rescue people, and I rescued no one that hurt me. That hurt me bad. We spent a couple of months there sifting through things, recovering unidentifiable people, carrying out our co-workers who had been there. A lot of those guys were responsible for training me, A lot of those guys I worked with, and we left those guys. We left them, and then it was over. I thought that when I left the job in 2004, all my worries would be gone. Unfortunately, I found out that that wasn't the case. A lot of different things that happened. It's 9/11, shootings, homicides, and some things that don't even seem related. Sandy Hook hurt me. Boston hurt me. It's all of that. I became a control freak. I thought my way was the right way, and it was the only way. I would have these emotional, angry outbursts, and I didn't even notice them. I was dysfunctional and abnormal, and my family suffered. And it took the loss of my family. I'm not home anymore. For me to understand who and what I was and understand there's another way. At first, it didn't seem that it resolved anything for me because I was so stuck in my own reality. I had the opportunity to vent, and I saw how bottled up I was. I saw how angry I was. This mental trauma is different. Bones heal quickly, but your brain? I mean, 9/11 is how long ago? And I still miss my friends. I still feel responsible, like I left them there. It's natural when you see trauma to experience pain. That's normal. And we isolate ourselves from it, and we insulate ourselves from things like that so we can stay strong, so we can continue doing our jobs. But we do have to recognize that all that stuff is going to be packaged, and it's going to have to come out sooner or later. So we should learn about diets and about exercise early in our career so we can manage that stuff while we're going through. You know, when we get to these incidents, if we go to a child call and that call bothers us, we have to talk about it. We can't just bottle it up because it's going to hurt us later on. I'm still evolving, I'm still growing, and I'm still healing. In the last few years, I've really dedicated myself to service. I've coached track. We have food drives, and we do clothes drives, and all the things that I do, the sharing, the giving, the mentoring, all will help me recover from my own personal injuries.
This is a group that doesn't talk. They view reaching out as weakness. You know, some of you even described yourselves as light switches to me. I just turn it on, turn it off, right? Work at work, home at home. I've heard that. And I envision, I just want to go stand at the light switch, flick it on and off, and on and off, and on and off. How long do you think that's going to take until something gives? Why are we so unwilling to accept help?
We don't think we need it.
I think even when we know we need it, we don't want it. I think it comes with that stigma. I want to be the one that's in charge all the time. I want to be the one that everybody thinks that they got their shit together. We don't have our shit together. We don't. They suffer in silence. They're afraid of speaking out of what they're struggling with. They feel alone. We realized there was a problem, so just kind of started talking to them as a peer, and then realizing that we need a lot more of this. We talk about the normal stress curve for an average person, a normal person, which you all are not normal. You're going to be right about here while you're working, and this is where nothing is going on. This is just you being in your patrol cars or being in the community. You're going to have a higher level of stress. Why?
Because we always got to be on or prepared mentally.
You always have to be on. It's called hypervigilance. So if you get that full adrenaline dump, you're going to go all the way up here. What's hypervigilance do for you?
Energizes.
It does. It energizes. So you get this false impression that you feel better at work than you do at home. How much time are you spending on that sofa? If you look at hypervigilance in general, if you go home and sit down and you haven't done anything to work out those chemicals that kept you so high all day long, it's going to have negative residual effects. Now, when you're driving home today and thinking that you have this free night, what are you envisioning doing? Relaxing. And you walk in the door and they say, let's go out to dinner. But you really don't want to go. So you get there. Most of you like to sit facing the door. Why? Threats, potential threats. Goes back to your training. You could probably tell me who's sitting in the corner, what they're wearing, but if I asked you what your significant other was wearing, you might not be able to tell me. They get why you face that door. They get that. They don't understand that once you're there, why it continues. You know, I always joke around and say they come in and they realize that I'm as messed up as they are, so it makes it a little easier to talk to me. I had to focus on the fact that I was dealing with depression at that time. And who wants to hear that? I struggled with depression myself, and I didn't realize I had it. Somebody had to tell me I had it, which was quite embarrassing because this is what I do. I teach about this. I should know. My first thought was, you're wrong. Who's going to trust me? How are you going to let me help you when you now know that I let myself get depressed? The overall goal is to make this more common practice that we are going to take care of you. We are going to reach out. We're going to make sure you're okay. And you shouldn't be embarrassed to pick up that phone and say, I had a bad day. The courage for anybody that's struggling with a mental health disorder to be able to speak in front of people and just speak of that vulnerability that you kept such a secret because maybe you were embarrassed by it, maybe you were ashamed by it, maybe you felt you were weak because of these things occurring. I applaud them all to be able to sit in this chair. I always joke around and say my one hope would be, if I could ever do this, would be to get every person in the room that our team has worked with. So everybody can look at everybody else and say, wow, I would have never thought you. When you see that it doesn't matter how trained you are or how tough you are or how seasoned you are, this can affect anybody.